Can I first of all welcome members of the public and press to the meeting today? And can I remind councillors and officers to use microphones and request that those attending the meeting ensure that all mobile phones and other communication devices are in silent mode. Can I also remind those attending the meeting that it will be recorded and be available on YouTube via the Council's website following the meeting. Are there any apologies for today's meeting?
We have no apologies today, Provost.
Thank you. On item 2 on the agenda, is there any declarations of interest? No. Thank you. Councillors, I ask the Chief Executive to call this special meeting today in discussion with the Leader of the Council. It is my opinion that the item of business on the agenda today should be considered as a matter of urgency to reflect the change in political balance on the Council. Can I now ask Councillor Lyle to move his motion?
Thank you, Provost. Can I first of all thank you for agreeing to call this special meeting of the Council. As you will be aware, Councillor Purvis and Councillor Shire have been suspended from the Conservative group. Sorry. Councillor Stewart have been suspended from the Conservative group. My apologies, and are no longer part of the administration.
Excuse me, Councillor, can I just interrupt you for a second? Yeah. I think your mic's not working very well.
Well, it is switched on, so if it's, I can try and realign it, if that's any help. Yes. Just as well the battery wasn't working, then probably that's it. I'll start again. As you will be aware, Councillors Purvis and Councillor Stewart are suspended from the Conservative group and are no longer part of the administration. Due to this change in the makeup of the administration, which has altered the political balance of the Council, I have proposals for consideration by the Council in relation to both the membership of committees and a number of outside bodies. I would therefore ask committee services to circulate these proposals. I am happy to formally move these proposals when we've had the opportunity to read them.
Right, can I now ask Councillor Duff to second the motion?
Thank you, Provost. Just happy to second the motion. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any amendments? Councillor Bailey?
Thank you, Provost. I have an amendment, but I'd appreciate a few moments to be able to read the motion ahead of sharing that with you.
Would you like a recess for 5 minutes? Yes? Okay, we'll have a recess for 5 minutes.
Provost, may I ask a question of you? Can you tell me if those names written in red, it's for clarity in the recess that I need to know get this information. That which is marked off in red in these papers, are they the current position or are they the proposed position? Thank you.
Okay. Councillor Bailey, can I ask you to move your amendment?
Thank you, Provost. In proposing this amendment, I'm well aware that there are outstanding allegations that Councillors Stewart and Purvis have breached the Code of Conduct. However, we have a long and deeply held tradition of innocent until proven guilty in this country. So I stand here today in support of that principle rather than to score any political point. Until such a time as their case is heard by the proper body, it is not for us in this chamber to take action against them. Due process must be followed. I don't agree with much of Councillors Stewart and Purvis's politics. However, I will not stand by and allow two properly elected persons to be silenced by virtue of being stripped of their seats on committees and outside bodies. To do so would be an affront to democracy and an insult to the residents that they represent. Therefore, I propose an amendment as follows. I propose that this Council agrees to the appointments to committees and subcommittees proposed in the motion, but does not agree the changes to outside bodies as proposed in the motion, and agrees instead that appointments to all outside bodies remain unchanged except for the following exceptions. I have this printed and I'll distribute it when I've spoken. Councillor Dugan be appointed to the Perth Harbour Board to replace an Administration Councillor. Councillor Purvis be appointed to Horsecross Perth Theatre and Concert Hall Executive Committee to replace an Administration Councillor. Councillor McEwen be appointed to Live Active Leisure Limited to replace an Administration Councillor. Councillor Stewart be appointed as the Chair of the Perth and Kinross Integration Joint Board effective from the 4th of October 2019. Councillor McColl be appointed to the East of Scotland European Consortium to replace Councillor Barrett. Councillor McColl be appointed to the Scotland Excel Joint Committee to replace Councillor Jarvis. Councillor McDade be appointed to the Community Planning Partnership Board to replace an Administration Councillor. In addition, yes.
Just shortly, yeah.
In addition, within the motion we have the items regarding the Scottish Council's Committee on Radioactive Substances, Perth UHI, and the Perth and Kinross Sports Council, which would remain as written in the motion. Thank you. I have this to distribute.
We'll have a further recess while you all have a chance to take in the amendment as well.
Can Councillor Brock second the amendment
I'll
first
just
before
do this.
recess?
Right. Councillor Brock, are you seconding the amendment? Yep.
Thank you, Provost. I am seconding this amendment today because I do not believe it is the place of this Council to be judge and jury of our fellow elected members' conduct. The appropriate body to investigate any allegations made against councillors is the Standards Commission. I am quite shocked at the lack of due process that has been afforded to Councillors Purvis and Stewart by their administration colleagues. They have not been afforded the right to see the complaints that have been made against them or the right to respond to those complaints. For hundreds of years in this country, there has been a presumption of innocence until proven otherwise, and it would appear that this administration does not take that view. I find this deeply concerning indeed, Provost. Over the last week, since the Leader of the Council announced his intention to call this meeting, elected members have received considerable amounts of correspondence in support of the actions of Councillors Purvis and Stewart. We have heard from a number of eyewitnesses supporting their versions of events, and given that support, it would again seem inappropriate to take any action at this time. It's entirely appropriate for the Council's committees to be rebalanced to reflect a new opposition majority, but I see no reason why this could not have taken place at the scheduled Council meeting in a few weeks' time. So in defence of the principles of natural justice, I am happy to second this amendment today. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Brock. We'll have a 5-minute recess while you have a good look at the amendments.
Provost, could I suggest that perhaps a 10-minute recess would be more appropriate?
Okay, if you're all happy with a 10-minute recess, I'm quite happy with that. Councillors, thank you very much. Getting back on time. Can I ask, is there any other amendments before we proceed? No. Then we'll go to the debate. Can I now invite contributions? No contributions? Councillor Dugan.
Thank you, Provost. I'm unclear, Provost, whether any of my colleagues are going to speak to the situation before us today, but I'm grateful for the opportunity that you've afforded me to set forward some views that I and my colleagues share in this situation. It must be said, Provost, that this has been an extremely taxing situation for members and officers of this council. The series of events which we find ourselves here today discussing is much to be regretted, and multiplying the amount of time and distraction and non-value added activity which I and my colleagues in the SNP have had to deploy, I can only guess at the opportunity and financial costs to this council and its affiliated partners of this situation. I say this, Provost, not as somebody who has fixed views as to the reasons, precipitations or culpability in any of this. Indeed, one of the most troubling facets of this endurance is the opaque aspect of the claim and counterclaim. At the heart of this, of course, must remain the provision of high-quality services for our population, delivered in concert with people's wishes and consistent with their ambition. I and my colleagues have sought to maintain this focus as we deliberated on our role in transacting this fracture within our council. The suspension of Councillors Purvis and Stewart from the Tory group is of no concern to the SNP. The subsequent suspension of both of these councillors from the IJB and Councillor Stewart from Tayside Health Board does concern us. This suspension has been proposed, and the leader of the council has convened this meeting here today as is his right. In so doing, the motion asks that we accede to the removal of these councillors from the roles that, by the research and assessment which I have undertaken, they apply themselves to assiduously and comprehensively. Provost, you will recall that I was fortunate enough to chair the Integration Joint Board's Pathfinder Board for the 2 years prior to going live on the IJB, and I chaired the IJB for 2 years. I was also on NHS Tayside Board for 5 years in the previous administration, and I therefore know with some painful experience the importance of confident, assertive, insightful and forensic scrutiny of such a challenged and challenging organisation. Let me be especially clear in this next point, Provost. Despite the value with which a councillor or board member may add to the governance and strategic function of an organisation, regardless of the vision and commitment they may attach to their role, if they cannot conduct themselves in an appropriate and respectful manner, then they risk having no role in any such organisation. Colleagues in this chamber will know that, for better or worse, I'm rarely slow to form an opinion on a given matter, and yet it is that which eludes me, and indeed my colleagues, in this situation. Trying to get in this dispute, I cannot, and it is not for want of trying, get a satisfactory fix on the merits or otherwise of these allegations. But nevertheless, we need to come together today as a council to transact that which has been put before us, and it is my ambition and that of my colleagues that we do this as expediently and calmly as possible. To this end, we have concluded that we have not seen compelling evidence of either misconduct or inappropriate behaviour sufficient to allow us to accede to the removal in advance of the ruling of the Standards Commissioner. Let me be very clear, however, we are not outright supporting Councillors Purvis and Stewart. Recognising their record and commitment, one way or another, is one thing, but we are not allied to them in any way, shape or form. Our assessments are pragmatic rather than political, and our findings are founded on evidence and events. Similarly, we make no deliberation on the allegations against them either. We are working with what's in front of us, no more, no less. We in the SNP group, after much challenging and robust internal discussion and deliberation, are minded that we will support the amendment to maintain Councillors Purvis and Stewart in their current IJB and Health Board roles. In so doing, however, we emphatically reserve the right as a group to ask the Council to reconvene when the findings of the Standards Commissioner are known, in order that the Council can take an informed view on what, if any, sanctions are required at that time. Thank you, Provost.
Thank you, Councillor Dugan. Are there any other questions? Comments, sorry, Councillor Drysdale.
Thank you. Thank you, Provost. As the SNP's representative on the Perth and Kinross Integration Joint Board, and as someone who actually witnessed some of the events that have led to this situation here today, I feel I must place on record my personal views. I shall not stray into discussing the specifics of what I saw and heard. That is, quite rightly, for the Standards Commission of Scotland to investigate in accordance with the law. The Ethical Standards in Public Life Scotland Act 2000 sets out the Commission's role to investigate possible breaches of the Councillor's Code of Conduct, and it is quite right that the highest standards of personal conduct are expected of all of us. There is a fair and thorough process to be gone through before sanctions such as censure, suspension from Council or a specific committee, or another public body such as the IJB, or disqualification as a councillor are contemplated. It is for the Standards Commission and not this administration to adjudicate on such matters. In these febrile times in the politics of our country, my political views are pretty much diametrically opposed to those of Councillors Purvis and Stewart. But there are some things that are more important. Firstly, a fair hearing is a fundamental right of all of us. Secondly, management continuity. The turnover of IJB members in the last 2 years and 2 and a bit years has been nothing short of ridiculous. When I sit on the IJB with Conservative councillors, politics are left at the door. We all recognise the vital importance of our roles in overseeing delivery of integrated health and social care services to the people of Perth and Kinross. That said, if the Standards Commission does, in due course, find that the behaviour of one or other of the councillors merits sanction, then this council should, without delay, revisit its position at that time. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Drysdale. Councillor Barrett.
Thank you, Provost. Following the decision by the Conservative group to suspend Councillors Stewart and Purvis from their group, the motion before us today seeks to reallocate committee places and outside body representation in accordance with the standing orders of the Council and the principle of proportional representation long practised by this Council, which ensures that both opposition and administration councillors are fairly represented in an inclusive manner. Provost, it's right that this administration nominates councillors from within its membership to outside bodies, and it's not tenable for opposition members to second-guess those nominations nor to counter them. To persist in nominating councillors Purvis and Stewart to the Integrated Joint Board and denying the administration its right to nominate its members is to bring this council into disrepute and will have a damaging impact on the operation of the IJB. Provost, I will not be part of an administration which could tolerate such opposition behaviour, nor one which would be confronted with having to put such nominations to the IJB and Scottish ministers. Provost, actions have consequences. There are serious risks to the Council's reputation if members pursue this amendment. The responsibility for that needs to be laid firmly at the feet of the SNP group today and any new administration, if one can be constructed, to take such a reckless course of action forward. We've heard a lot about natural justice, but one of the clear principles of natural justice is that justice is swift. The Standards Commission for Scotland is incapable of delivering due process within a reasonable timetable, far less deal with a situation requiring urgency. The Conservative group has acted to suspend 2 of its members. The administration has proposed consequent changes to its representation on committees and outside bodies, and Provost, frankly, that should be the end of the matter. It should not be blocked by an opposition knowing the failings and inabilities of the Standards Commission for Scotland. If a new administration can be formed by the SNP, Labour, Independent and Renegade Conservative councillors, if they want to take forward today's amendment, then let them do so. If there's no new administration to do that, then we need to convene another emergency council meeting in a week's time to agree the NHS and IJB representation before us in our motion today. As Liberal Democrats, we are committed to serving the best interests of our area and our communities, not to fan the flames of political upheaval. We stand ready to take back the mantle of administration when any SNP, Labour, Independent and Conservative administration, should it ever get off the ground, inevitably implodes and disintegrates. But we will not be any party to this amendment, Provost.
Thank you, Councillor Barrett. Councillor Purvis.
Thank you, Provost. I've thought carefully about whether to say something today, but I think it's important that for the public and press who are here, I'm able to explain what I think has happened in recent days and months. When it comes to the IJB meeting scheduled for the 29th of July, every single decision that I made, every conversation that I had, every action that I took, I would take again, because I was doing my job. I have real concerns.
I think you're straying.
Sorry?
Councillor Purvis, as we have discussed the actions that you and Councillor Stewart and others took on the 29th of July need to remain confidential in a matter for the Ethical Standards Commission. It's not for playing out in public gallery this afternoon.
If that is the Provost ruling, then I will respect that ruling, although I would strongly disagree with it. I would just like to reflect, however, on the irony of this situation, that we are at a public meeting that has been hastily arranged. Everyone is in attendance. Everyone is able to turn up to watch the spectacle of the administration attempting to remove Councillor Stewart and me from the IJB. But the real issues that we were trying to discuss at our meeting of the IJB could not be held, and still has not been held 3 months after the publication of the report.
Councillor, you're straying again.
Okay, right. There's not much I can say then, I suppose.
Well, perhaps you should just say...
Excuse me, Provost. Councillor Barrett has again interrupted the full council. As a point of order, it is unacceptable conduct which he has repeatedly done on a number of occasions, and I think that, we have to have some form of order, please.
Yeah, just to call it. Are you finished now, Councillor Purvis?
No, I would just like to make the point that I'm disappointed with the actions that the Conservative group have taken in this situation, and I would have hoped that we would have received support for what we were doing without discussing the specific matters. Just in terms of the standing order point that was raised by Councillor Barrett, the standing order he references does not apply to outside bodies. I'd also like to make the point that certainly we do not see this as a confidence issue in the administration. If the administration choose to continue, that is perfectly within their rights to do. I know that certainly Councillor Stewart and I are not intending to form an administration with the SNP anytime soon. I'm sure the SNP would hold the same view as us on that. But just to conclude, as far as Councillor Stewart and I are concerned, everything that we do is in what we think are the best interests of the people in Perth and Kinross. That does not change whether we are in administration or opposition, and that will not change regardless of the outcome of today's vote. I'm very happy and grateful for the support that I've received from colleagues, from members in the public and others on this issue, and would ask councillors to support the amendment.
Thank you, Councillor Purvis. Councillor Stewart. And again, Councillor, if you can just keep to don't stray.
Thank you, Provost. My comments will be significantly shorter given your prior ruling than I had intended. I have to say that it is more in sorrow than in anger that I address you and my fellow elected members today and participate in this debate on Councillor Lyall's motion and the amendment this afternoon. The flawed complaints process that Councillor Lyall has followed, leading to Councillor Purvis's and my suspension from the Conservative group and the administration, and the whole debate today, in fact, all are distractions from the other real governance issues of which other elected members will not be aware, but which you've ruled that I can't address. There are, I hope you will believe me, real governance concerns that should be front and centre of people's considerations, and that you, Provost, and everyone else here today should be concerned enough to ask questions about, rather than the distraction and waste of members' and officers' time for which this meeting today has been called. I suspect that this whole spectacle, while being personally discomforting to Councillor Purvis and myself, is actually most unedifying to members of the wider public in communities across the length and breadth of Perth and Kinross. And I've had occasion, I must admit, to ask myself whether there is point in enduring this opprobrium and the outrage in the complaints against us. Then, however, I read the messages of support, those in public, those circulated to elected members, and those that have come to us privately, and I'm heartened by them.
Councillor, you're straying again.
I'm reminded that out there in our communities there are those who are voiceless in these matters, to whom we are now providing voice, those who are subject to epistemic injustice, who need someone to fight their corner, and I become more determined to carry on.
Okay, Councillor.
And therefore, Provost, I will be supporting Councillor Bailey's amendment today.
Any other comments? Councillor Lyle, would you like to sum up?
Thank you again, Provost. I really want to keep this as brief as possible, and this is really a meeting that was called for a purpose, not for a debate, in my opinion. And just for clarity to Councillor Brock, that this council meeting was called so that we could address a political imbalance in the council, and it was not called for any other reason. And I don't wish to make any further comments.
Can we now move to the vote?
Thank you, Provost. We're dealing with item 3 on the agenda today, appointments to committees and outside bodies. We have a motion from Councillor Lyle, seconded by Councillor Duff, the terms of which have been circulated to you. If I could just point out a couple of errors on the lists of membership. With regards to the Audit Committee, Councillor Drysdale has been listed twice, both as a convener and a member. It should read Councillor Drysdale and Councillor McDade. And also, regarding the outside body developing the Cultural Offer Programme Board, the membership should read, in addition to the 3 members, Councillors Parrott and Councillor Waters. We have an amendment from Councillor Bailey, seconded by Councillor Brock, the terms of which have been circulated to you. In addition to those written terms, it lists that it does not agree to the changes to the outside bodies as proposed in the motion. However, it was confirmed that that does not include the Scottish Council's Committee on Radioactive Substances, the Perth and Kinross Sports Council, and the Perth College UHI membership. Can I remind councillors that voting is by roll call, so when I call out your name, can you indicate whether you're voting for the motion or the amendment? Councillor Ahern.
Motion.
Councillor Anderson.
Amendment.
Councillor Bailey.
Amendment.
Councillor Baird.
Motion.
Councillor Band.
Amendment.
Councillor Barnacle.
Amendment.
Councillor Barrett.
Motion.
Councillor Braun.
Motion.
Councillor Brock. Councillor Audrey Coates.
Motion.
Councillor Harry Coates.
Motion.
Councillor Donaldson.
Amendment.
Councillor Dugan.
Amendment.
Councillor Drysdale.
Amendment.
Councillor Duff.
Motion.
Councillor Forbes. Councillor Gray. Councillor Illingworth.
Motion.
Councillor James.
Motion.
Councillor Jarvis. Councillor Lang. Councillor Lyle. Motion. Councillor McCall.
Motion.
Councillor McCall.
Amendment.
Councillor McDade.
Amendment.
Councillor McEwen.
Amendment.
Provost.
Motion.
Councillor Parrott. Amendment. Councillor Pover.
Amendment.
Councillor Purvis.
Amendment.
Councillor Rebeck.
Amendment.
Councillor Reid.
Motion.
Councillor Robertson. Councillor Sarwar. Councillor Shires. Councillor Simpson.
Motion.
Councillor Stewart.
Amendment.
Councillor Waters. Councillor Williamson. Councillor Wilson.
Motion.
Thank you, Provost. I have 19 votes for the motion, 21 votes for the amendment, and the amendment is therefore carried.
Councillor Ahern.
I wish to record my dissent on the vote.
I wish to record my
Noted.
dissent, Provost.
And mine, Provost.
And mine, Provost.
And mine.
Councillor Duff, dissent as well, please.
Councillor Williamson. Thank you. Thank you, everyone, for patience today. And that's the end of the meeting. Thank you.